Welcome back to the Female Dating Strategy, the meanest female-only podcast on the internet. I'm your host, Diana.
And I am Rose. And today we're discussing my favorite nexus of topics, which is Hollywood, gossip, and gender dynamics. Diana, I cannot wait. Let's get into it.
Yes, this is our Roast-a-Scrote Hollywood edition.
Oh, we've got so many scrotes to roast. It's a plural. It's like a plethora. It's a surplus.
Mm-hmm.
It's a surfeit of scrotes. Ooh, I love that. You know how you think about, like, what's the plural of something? Like, you've got a gaggle of hens, or you've got for crows, like, you know, you have different names for when you have multiples of animals.
Yeah, what's the plural for scrotes?
So I think we should call it a surfeit of scrotes.
A grumble of scrotes.
Oh my gosh. And you know, actually, everything that I've heard about the Oscars has been secondhand. Like, I've absorbed it on the internet via Reddit, or I have a couple of gossip websites that I love, like Celibitchy or Lady Gossip. Shout out to all the wonderful writers there. But I don't have a TV, so I can't watch it anyway. I know I could find something on YouTube, but I don't care that much. But what I find most interesting, besides the fashion, of course, because I'm such a fashion whore, I just love seeing, although it was a lot of boring fashion this year. But anyway, what I really like is to see the public's response and engagement with Hollywood. That's what I like about these sorts of award shows. What came down through the pipeline was like utter disgust over Adrian Brody.
The crazy thing is, things have changed so much, like in Hollywood. I haven't even seen an award show in like 5 years. I think the last time I saw the Oscars in like full was in 2019 when Parasite won. And since then, I haven't seen an Oscar like show entirely. I mean, they didn't have one for a couple of years, I think, or it was like online or something. I don't remember. I definitely think that people's appetite for this has changed a lot as well. I feel like the industry has just changed a lot in terms of what it awards. And it's gone back to a very sort of conservative timeline of like rewarding all of these like annoying white men.
Yeah, they go back to what's safe and what's known, right?
Exactly.
Like, was it a couple years ago they had Oscars So White? And it was all about the lack of diversity and inclusion and like, you need to do better, Hollywood. And then you look at like what came down the pipeline this year and it could not have been whiter.
I mean, what did they do with that Oscar So White stuff, right? Like they had all these celebrities like boycott the event, and then what happened? Nothing happened. There's less Black people on the show now than there ever were. There's like less people of any color in that show. You know what I mean? I kind of understand Bong Joon-ho when he's like, yeah, this is just a local production. Like, good for you. There's very few kings in this dynamic, and like him roasting the Oscars is probably the best part of him winning the Oscars. Like, imagine roasting the Oscars as you're holding. He's like, oh yeah, this is just a local production.
Well, and I have to say, the opposite of Roast-a-Scrote would be Conan O'Brien, who continues to be one of the least problematic entertainers, especially comedians. Comedians are notoriously problematic, right? And he just continues to like keep his nose clean, keep the jokes funny, but not be mean about it. And he seems to be loyal to his wife, and all of his employees that work for him, like past or present, seem to have nothing but good things to say about him. I think it's like Keanu Reeves and Conan O'Brien are like our most unproblematic stars of today. So Conan O'Brien, if you're listening here, I just want you to know I'm really proud of you. You did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult gig in general because, you know, it's such a low bar, you would think. You know, like in the last few years, it's been so difficult to find a host because of like personal scandals and stuff that have come up of previous hosts and just like general boredom as well. It's really hard to find good hosts in general, you know, and of course it's going to be a pretentious event. You know what I mean? This is awarding the best in the movies all over the world.
It's the most elite giving themselves participation trophies, okay?
Exactly. I mean, there's nothing more Hollywood than that. It's like, oh, tell us we're doing a good job. No. We will tell ourselves that we're doing a great job.
Exactly. And we'll make sure we, broadcast it to the entire world.
Yeah. But that being said, there were a lot of scrotes in this show this year, and like a lot of scrotiness was rewarded this year. And so I want to go into some of that. So I guess for the first scrote I want to roast is Adrian Brody.
Mm-hmm. Here.
Yeah, for subjecting my man Cillian Murphy to what is the longest and most obnoxious speech in the history of Oscar monologues.
Seriously, they timed it. They showed that afterwards.
You had 45 seconds, dude. What do you have to say that is so important? Sometimes I think there's some truth to what Ricky Gervais said, which is like, pick up your award, thank your God, thank your agent, and then sit your ass back down because nobody wants to fucking hear your take on politics or anything.
Nobody needs to hear your agent's name being called. Nobody but your agent cares, okay?
That meandering speech he gave, the whole time he was speeching it up, I was looking at Killian and being like, this poor man just wanted to go home. Okay, he wanted to go back home to his wife and kids, and he's sitting over there being like, I'm being subjected to this torture of having to sit and listen to this man for 5 minutes.
And you know what? Cillian Murphy's speech last year was like the ideal speech. Like, men, please watch and learn from him. I mean, he was so gracious. It was very personal, but it was very brief. And he thanked everyone and walked off like within 30 seconds. You know, be like him.
If I may, like, he might take my award for top Irishman of the show, like over Conan O'Brien, because Cillian Murphy, I don't know that a lot of people know this, but when Ireland was having this referendum, because Ireland was a very strict Catholic country, and for a very long time, women could not get abortions there. And so they had to fly out to England to get abortions. Way back when, like, Irish women who got pregnant out of wedlock would have to give up their kids for adoption. So they've had a very serious and very sad problem with abortion just because of their very Catholic stance on it, And so when the referendum happened, Cillian Murphy was actually one of the people who was protesting with the women to grant women the right to have abortions in Ireland. And when the referendum was passed, he sent the office that was like responsible for organizing most of the protests, like a ginormous cake thanking them for all the work that they did. Yeah, he was in every one of those protests, by the way. Like there's like lots of pictures and stuff of him attending those protests. So shout out to him.
Definitely a shout out to him. A couple of the other things I've heard about him that indicate that he may well be an actual decent human being. I'll give you two examples. One is apparently when they were living in for quite a while in London while he was having his successful career take off, he noticed his children were talking in a posh British accent. And he was like, nope, that's not going to be my kids. And so he moved them back to like Glasgow or something like that.
No, he moved them back to Ireland. I think he moved them back to Dublin.
To Dublin, yes, thank you. So he was like, no, fuck this. They are not going to sound like these posh Nancys from, from Oxford. I love that.
He pulled a super Irish move.
Right? He pulled a super Irish move. And I've seen interviews where people are like, you're from England. You're English, right? He's like, I'm Irish. And they're like, same thing. And he's like,
no.
say that to an Irishman in Ireland, right? And he was classy about it.
It was an Israeli interviewer who was like, you're British. And he's like, no, I'm not British. I'm Irish.
The other thing that I think is really noteworthy is like one of his earliest films was When the Wind Shakes the Barley, which, if I'm not mistaken, was about the Irish Troubles and or something to do with, like Ireland and Britain and that sort of eternal ongoing struggle. And I think we so rarely see like Irish national pictures. There just are very few, even though they have quite a successful cadre of screenwriters and filmmakers and actors that come out of Ireland, but it's rare that you actually see like these smaller stories getting told from Ireland. And so I just think he's led a really admirable career. And even his speeches seem to speak to like him being a real genuine dude. So Cillian Murphy, props to you as well.
I do have one tiny little anecdote about him. I don't know for what film this was, but it was like a Christopher Nolan film or something. I don't remember which film it was, but for one of his films, all of the actors were required to be in this like dorms separated away from their family and like, shooting for how many ever days straight, not interacting with their family at all. And he fought for an exemption from this because he was like, yeah, fuck y'all, I'm going to go back to my wife and kids. And so he was the only one in the cast that like after he was done with his day of work, went back to his wife and kids. And this is something that other people note about him in working with him as well. They're like, he has very strict boundaries. Like he won't come and hang out with us after dinner and after shoots and stuff. He's not going to sit and drink and like eat with us. He's going to be like, I have to go back to my family. Bye. So he seems like he prioritizes his family a lot. So, again, I don't know him from Adam, so who knows what he's like in real life. But from based on these anecdotes and these stories, it seems like, well, he prioritizes family and he seems like a half-decent guy. So good for him.
I want to hear more stories like that. And I feel like especially with the rise of social media and the internet, like so much of the sort of mucky muck of Hollywood has come out. I think pre-internet, you never would have seen Harvey Weinstein going to jail or Bill Cosby being disgraced. But so much of that has been able to come out through, Blind Items and Deux Moi and all of the different, right? Like the gossip nexus is so helpful for us.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Irish, Scottish, Welsh, like I wouldn't go as far as to say all the British ones because some of the English ones can be obnoxious as well. But overwhelmingly, the actors that come from the British Isles and like the workers that come from that industry tend to be quite grounded because I think like the Hollywood machine of their country is not nearly as refined as it is in the States, where like even children are forced into that system and like basically made into adults really, really young. So I feel like in general, they come across a lot more grounded. And speaking of Harvey Weinstein, his ex wife is the woman who's dating Adrian Brody now.
Right, Georgina Chapman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you noticed this and you caught this, but like right before he went up to get his speech, he was chewing like a bit of gum and he gave it to her and like basically like she held it in her hand so that he could go up to walk. He like threw it at her. It was the most disgusting thing.
It was even worse than that. It was even worse than that because I feel like what you're leaving out is how she like tripped over herself, fell over herself trying to catch this gum. Like as she's in her, Marquesa or Marchesa, I never know how to pronounce it. She's the head of this label and like was tripping over herself and giggling and just like smiling like a hyena, trying to catch his dirty used gum while he's going on stage to accept the greatest award from his peers. Like, dude, you couldn't tuck it in your chin. You couldn't swallow it. You couldn't put it like literally on under the seat of your chair in the auditorium. Like, how fucking disgusting is that?
May this type of love never find me.
Never find you. That was the first thing that came. Like, I heard people complaining about his speech. So, like, oh, what he thought he doesn't think he has to prepare. Like, because people were comparing online, like, how Zoe Saldana was getting so much shit over like how emotional she was and like crying out to her mommy and like she was sort of getting derided for how overly sincere she was, like how earnest, which I think, listen, these are theater people, okay? They're theater kids. Never forget. I don't care how gorgeous or how moneyed they are now. Are eternal theater kids at heart. And if you don't know what that means, I think there's a movie called Summer Camp or Theater Camp that explains everything for you very well. And it's also hilarious.
Just catch an episode of Glee and watch Leah Michelle and you'll
Yeah.
get it. Okay.
You'll get it, okay? But so, like, at the same time, though, like, her speeches were always on time. She thanked all the people who were important to her. Like, she was composed enough to, like, and prepared, right? Whereas, like, Adrian Brody's just like, oh, I've been here before, so I'll figure it out. Like, just, I know what I'm doing. Like, he pulled such a mediocre white man move, dude.
Yeah, but also it's like, can you imagine if a woman of color, any woman, tried to pull off what he did and said, "You're going to give me more than 45 seconds"? Like, I am entitled to more than 45 seconds. Like, he just ended up jumping in there and just dragging on the show and didn't even add anything important in that discourse. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to be sitting and chit chatting for that long, you might as well actually say something meaningful and not subject my poor man Killian to your shenanigans.
You poor man, Killian. Justice for Killian.
Justice for Killian, seriously. I was looking at him the whole time and I was like, he just wants to go home. That's an expression of a man who's like, where is my wife? Or where are my kids?
It's a long flight home from here, right? Seriously. And I think the other thing that really, really struck me when hearing about his award or whatnot was, I mean, this is a man who we all remember in the light of like Me Too, how his whole like sort of sexual aggression to Holly Berry when she won her award and he handed it to her, right? And like hindsight, people were like, that was really kind of problematic, eh? Like that really wasn't so great. But then, of course, they came up with the idea to like reenact that after he had his victory. And it's like, Holly Berry, God damn it. But I mean, if you look at her history with men, like Holly Berry might be one of the world's biggest pick-me's, which is such a tragedy because could she be more beautiful? Could she be more talented? She seems like a decent person. And yet every single man in her life, apart from what seems to be her now relationship, but again, who can say? Everything we've seen until now was like sex addict, cheat, physically abusive, like financially abusive, and it's like, hot damn, if Holly Berry can't find a decent man, but the point is, too, is part of this system. And she too is subject to all of this bullshit Hollywood white male stuff that, we all have to put up with, but it's at a heightened level for her. And so when they restaged that like kiss, I just thought, oh God, it's like you're putting a stamp of approval on something that really upset you like 20 years ago. And now you're just like, oh, it's all good. No worries. Let's have a fun viral moment again. Why?
Yeah, also, like, I mean, the thing is, Hollywood chooses to reward women who participate in this in general, right? Not just by virtue of how they behave in these award shows, but also the kinds of movies they put out. Like going back to the winner of the evening, it was Honora this year. And, I haven't had a chance to watch Honora because every film festival I attended this year, it was like, that's all everyone could keep buzzing about. And because of that, like the screenings for the film kept filling up, and so, like, it didn't matter which film festival I went to this year. I just couldn't catch Honora because everybody was watching it. And I was really curious to see it because, obviously, if there's any movie that generates as much buzz, you want to know what the hell it's about. I have no idea if it's a pro prostitution or anti prostitution film. I don't know whether it's entertaining or not. It was marked as a comedy.
What I've heard is that it's the movie that Pretty Woman was scared to be, where basically love doesn't win all in the end, right? And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's like a legit message, okay. But I too have not seen it.
Also, Pretty Woman is like wishful thinking, right? Because we want to hope that like men have treat sex workers with integrity and decency or whatever, but they don't. That's the thing. And I think that Honora is that kind of film where it's like she's reduced essentially to what she is, which is a sexual prop. And I think that's what's difficult for that character to accept, that, she existed to fulfill a certain kind of fantasy. And then once the fantasy was achieved, she's discarded. And I think a lot of women can relate to that aspect of the film. You serve a purpose in a man's life, and then the second you cease to be useful, you're out, right? Of course, I don't want to speak too broadly about the film without having watched it myself because I have no idea what the film is really about. But it's quite interesting. I had this discussion with Rose in the pre-talk. Cheryl Lee Ralph, who is the actor from Abbott Elementary. I mean, of course, she's done other things as well, but she's a massive actress. She did an interview with someone, and she said, "Oh yeah, I've always said the easiest way to win an Oscar is to get on a pole because sex sells." And people were tearing apart for that, and I was like, no, valid, because if you look at the number of Black women who won the Best Actress category and the number of women who have won for playing sex workers, I think there's like 11 people who won for being sex workers, which goes to show you what Hollywood values in women. And there's like 2 Black women that have won the Best Actress category.
Are you hearing this, people? Like, how could you dare to shout down Cheryl Lee Ralph, who is just spitting straight facts and data? And that's something that we were also finding ironic in our pre-talk, was like, it was the most substance thing having Mikey Madison from Honora win over Demi Moore. Like, that could not have been more the substance coded than the substance movie itself.
Which is sad, right? Because, like, I think the substance was actually Demi Moore's, like, some of her best work. I think she put a lot of heart and soul into that film, and it's a shame that she didn't win. And Mikey Madison was perfectly fine, I'm sure. But again, I guess I'll have to see the movie to figure out what the hype is about that warranted her winning Best Actress. But I feel like the industry in general is probably more concerned in rewarding, which also, there was a lot of problems. Like, I want to go more into like the making of the film that I found was very problematic more than the actual film itself, because obviously I haven't seen the film. So something that's become like the norm in Hollywood now is like the intimacy coordinator, which was really to help actresses who didn't have like strong enough boundaries to tell the actor men, like, fuck off, and I don't want to do that shit. Because obviously an actress who's vulnerable and young and new to the industry is not going to have the boundaries necessary to tell the director or another actor to fuck off if she feels like her boundaries are being violated. And the intimacy coordinator is really there to offer that help to them, right? And Mikey Madison was interviewing Pamela Anderson, and she was talking about how she didn't have an intimacy coordinator. I don't know if it was Pamela Anderson. It was somebody else, maybe. I'm not sure. But point is that she was talking about how she didn't want one. She didn't ask for one. And that was because she had been living with Sean Baker and his wife for a little while in Brighton Beach. And basically, they reenacted this. They, by they, I mean Sean Baker and his wife, reenacted how they wanted her to film those scenes. And then she did them. And I thought that was really freaking strange. That, like, the director and his producer wife are like essentially, I mean, Hollywood is a weird place, but just like enacting sex scenes for you to watch. It sounded very porn sick to me. And like the wife being a part of it and producing it as well, I was like, this is bizarre that they're acting it out in front of you and being like, do exactly this. Like, you know what I mean? It was very strange. But like she was advocating for, she's like, oh, I think it's totally up to the discretion of the actor or for the actress if they want it or not. And I'm like, the point of this is that like you're not the only person in that dynamic. There are crew members, there are extras, there are side characters. Like you're not the only person who's the most important any more than like the actor is the only person who's important. I get that the actors are like the people who are the most important in the scene in terms of like whether they want an intimacy coordinator or not. But I feel like there should be some room made for people who have to film it as well, because they're the ones who are stuck with you. And they might be uncomfortable sitting and watching that shit, you know? And I mean, of course, a lot of Honora just felt like soft porn to me, which is why I was like, I'm side-eyeing Hollywood, like praising this so much.
But you know Hollywood. You know they love that shit. They live for like a vulnerable young woman having to be sexy and exploited and sad. Like they get off on that. Like that's why there's so much of that in porn, right? And I think that's something I've read too as well from like the gossip sites or like the media experts where they say like Hollywood loves to pit, an icon versus an ingenue. And it's rare that the icon wins, right? They want the ingenue because she's young and she's malleable. And like, I think Mikey Madison is just turning 25 this year. So she would have been, 23, 24 when filming. And I think that speaks to her immaturity that she would say, like, I shouldn't be mandated or like I shouldn't be made to have an intimacy coordinator. Okay, you can demur, but that's still part of the mandatory personnel on set. That is just simply protocol now. You don't get to call that off.
Exactly, because there's so many women who are coming after you who are younger than you who might not be comfortable advocating for themselves in that way. And like that's why that job exists. It's to provide them the space to feel comfortable. In what is already a very strange job. You know what I mean? It was like certain things like that I was like side-eyeing and being like, this is really fucking weird. And like, the Substance being snubbed, Wicked being snubbed. Like, I mean, like I was really surprised that Cynthia Erivo didn't win more awards, because I mean, I'm not even going to try to pull a Kiki Palmer here and try to replicate those notes. Cynthia was hitting those notes. She was belting her guts out. For what? For what? And I mean, if anything, the spirit of Wicked is more oriented around female friendship than anything else. And I still feel like,
I think that answers your question right there. Why they didn't win it? Like, Substance was all about women, and like, the prisons that they are imprisoned in because of the male gaze. Basically, like Hollywood is the male gaze writ large. And Wicked is about female friendship. And another thing I've heard is that Hollywood Guild and Hollywood voters read as an older white men, especially, or even older white women, like they tend to be very averse to awarding any films from genres that are horror or musicals. Like they just think they're like inconsequential or too unimportant as far as films go, which also speaks to the fact that they have a lot of anti-populism. They're very elite. So anything that the masses like, anything that's really popular among the people can't be good. It can't be artistic. There's something suspect about it. So something like Enora, like where it wasn't even really in theaters. I don't know anybody. I'm in a major American city and I didn't see it. I mean, it might have been shown somewhere for like one weekend, but I would have had to drive or like take a very long bus ride and a train ride and another bus ride to get there. You know what I mean? Whereas Wicked was like racking up all of the money. Like they were breaking box office records this year. And Hollywood was like, yeah, but it's just too crass. And it's about women. Like, who cares?
yeah, and it's too loud and too commercial and too blood, whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. And she had dreads in her hair. She had dreads. How dreadful.
Exactly. And also it's a film about racism, And yeah, so it's like two things, racism and female friendships. And it's like, no, thank you. We don't want that. Pass. Hard pass. But that's the bizarre thing about this industry. Also, the people who write for this industry overwhelmingly are extremely porn sick men. Like, it's nothing is more obvious about how porn sick the men are in Hollywood than the kinds of shit that they write about. Because not only do they write incredibly unrealistic women, but they also tend to write their own fantasy versions of what they think should happen. Like, I will never forget this male screenwriter I met who had just been through a divorce, and his wife actually left him for somebody else.
Good for her.
Yeah. And I don't even blame her because, after getting to know him, I was like, okay, I see why. Very, very fucking annoying and just extremely dismissive of women. And he would keep going on, like, wanting women to validate him, being like, oh, I really love intelligent women. I love smart women. But anytime there was a woman in our class who was very forthcoming and like outspoken, he'd be like, oh, she's very opinionated, don't you think? And I was like, well, what's wrong with having fucking opinions? I thought you liked intelligent women. You know what I mean?
Yeah, until they start talking.
Right? And so he wrote this like insert about, there's like this TV show that he wrote that I read where the wife character, which is very obviously his wife, is having sex in the next room with like her boyfriend or whatever, while his character is just sitting there experiencing it all. And I was like, wow, men are like, you know what? I've thought about this a lot and I'm going to present this hypothesis to you. But I think men are the ultimate cucks. Because if you think about it, porn is them watching another man have sex with a woman that they desire. And they get off on that. And I'm like, is that not just being a ginormous cuck?
Oh shit.
You're not even having sex with this woman. You're watching another man having sex with a woman that you desire. And then they write shows where they get to demonize that woman. And that was what was happening with his ex-wife. He was like demonizing her for leaving him. When, in all honesty, after knowing him for the better part of 2 years, I was like, okay, I understand why she left you. Because you're incredibly selfish and kind of an asshole. You're an asshole.
You know, there's a meme that I wish I could just like have. Maybe I should get it printed on like what a little handheld flyer. Like I love the Lucille Bluth "good for her" meme from Arrested Development.
Oh my God.
Right? I don't know if you know this one, but her face where she's like, "good for her." Like, ooh.
Of course I do.
Right? I've only like watched a couple of those episodes because it's hard humor for me to like watch nonstop. So I've caught a little bit here and there, but Lucille Bluth, I fucking love her. She's amazing. And that iconic meme of her was saying like, "good for her." Like, sorry, not sorry. I'm proud of that woman for leaving that man. And you know what? She probably needed another man in order to free herself from him. Because unfortunately, Diana, as you know, so many of us are male centered. Unless we have another male to center ourselves on, we literally don't know how to extricate ourselves from these relationships.
Yeah, and also, I mean, from what I understand, she was a pretty prolific producer in her home country. He was like a headhunter or something like that, and he quit his job to be a screenwriter. And like she basically covered for them for the few years that he was, at film school trying to, get his career off track. I mean, get his career on track or whatever. But she was like producing, she was like doing her thing. You know what I mean? And I think she just met the other guy organically. But the point is that, like, she was supposed to come live with him, and that never worked out. And then he ended up like basically creeping on a bunch of girls in the class and really creeping them out because he was like buying random women gifts and stuff. And obviously they were kind of like disturbed by this because they're like, this guy is married. Like, why is he buying random women gifts? And he like tried to do the whole nice guy thing of like, I'm just trying to be nice based on our shared interests. But like, I think most of the women saw through that and saw how phony it was. And they were like, yeah, no, this is creepy. This is creepy as hell. And that's what I mean. Like, I think like people underestimate just how many weird men there are in Hollywood. Like I specifically want to talk about the screenwriters because it's such an isolated craft. And these men sit over here like judging everybody, right? Judging the directors and the actors for having access to women that they don't have access to. And so they write out all their fantasies in these scripts, essentially. But they're the most antisocial men you could possibly meet. And first of all, I would caution anybody against dating a man in Hollywood. But specifically, don't date the screenwriters, okay?
Yeah, like screenwriters and comedians. Those are the two ones that I always heard.
Yes.
Like, do not. Like, just damaged goods. Do not. Leave on the shelf. Do not touch.
It's a constant joke I make where people are like, one of the things I hate about dates is when men go on monologues about themselves for like hours. Like they pull an Adrian Brody and you don't get a chance to like say anything about yourself because they're just busy taking up all the time. And I'm like, if I wanted to listen to a man monologue for an hour, I would go to a stand-up show. And I don't. So
I usually say like if I wanted to listen to a man monologue, I'd watch a Martin Scorsese film. But I don't. So I do not. Like, no offense. I know he's a wonderful director and filmmaker, but I cannot get over how there are practically no women in his entire oeuvre of film.
Except for his mom. His mom is there, popping in and out.
Okay, fine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You know what? I'm not surprised because if you look at like the early films, right, these auteurs and stuff who started out in the 80s and the 70s and the 90s, like when they were making their films on shoestring budgets, like how often do you think that they had women who were just friends hanging out, ready to film with them? How often do you think that was a thing? You know what I mean? Even when I think of like shows like Seinfeld and stuff, right, with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, like I feel like the only reason she was on that show is because she could hold her own being a billionaire's kid. Like,
yes.
What could they fucking do to her? She's one of the richest women on earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, that was the only reason that she was pulled in. Like, I think it's very rare that you get what the Friends cast had, where all of them advocated for all of them to be paid equally, and, like, the men weirdly actually looked out for the gender pay gap in their group, and all of them got paid the exact same wage, I think, after season 2 or 3. And, like, that was rare, because I think it was David Schwimmer that advocated for all of them to unionize and essentially get paid together as an ensemble. And I don't think most men do that.
We know they don't, Diana. It's not. We know they don't. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we know they don't. Even then, that was kind of unheard of in the industry, that like people would get paid together as a group, because that's caused conflict in other shows before about like what everybody is worth. You know what I mean? And I think that the fact that they were able to get ahead of that and be like, for the health of the group, it's better that we all get paid the same because we're putting the same amount of work in. But that's the thing about Hollywood, is just by nature, it's a very patriarchal, it's a reflection of a patriarchal system, right? Because it's the, what do you call it? The soft
The soft power.
power of the US. Yeah. It's a soft power of the US. So it's going to reflect those patriarchal values. Even when it seems like it's very progressive. That's the funny thing. I find it really amusing that people think that Hollywood is going to be this like progressive beacon of hope in the US, when it's like, when has it ever been that?
Literally. Hello. Never. I mean,
Never.
Birth of a Nation. Have you ever actually watched that? It was like the most pro-racist, pro-slavery, pro-white supremacy, pro-Southern, Union seceding in the history of the world. And like that was the first main movie that came out.
And that won. Didn't that win some awards?
Yeah, it was it was like one of the hugest movies ever, literally ever, to come out of that cesspool. Because people like to be entertained, they're so willing to overlook sort of the moral degeneracy of so much of this system. I've never been able to, which is why I've never missed having a TV, because I'm like so selective with what I ingest, with what I consume, because I don't want to be putting money or my energy or attention into the pockets of these fucking perverts and fools, which is what most of them are. And something that really kind of struck me when we were talking about the Roast-a-Scrote Hollywood edition, and again, this is what I heard secondhand, okay? Because like, again, I'm not watching the awards show, but when I heard about Kieran Culkin, who like always plays this sort of bumbling, ne'er-do-well, even when he's accepting awards, like apparently for months and months at every award that he kept racking up, Golden Globes, et cetera, et cetera, he would say this thing about like, okay, my wife knows she owes me another kid now that I won the award, she owes me another kid. And it was like, ha ha ha, isn't he such a little scamp? What a lovable scamp. And it's like, are you literally, I don't actually care if he's joking. Like, have you seen the rollback in women's rights in the last couple months? Like, have you been aware of what's happening politically here and abroad? And you're going to be joking about your wife owing you another child? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I think apparently they had like a bet or something that was like, he was like asking her for another kid, and she's like, I'll give you another kid when you win an Oscar. And so when he won his Oscar, he was like, okay, let's get cracking. I mean, look, if it's an inside joke, maybe keep it inside, right?
Keep it an inside joke. Yeah, I don't care if it's a bet between you two.
Strange thing to say out loud in public.
It can be between you two.
It's very strange to triangulate the world into forcing your wife into giving birth for you.
Yeah, dude, like, don't bring us into the bedroom. Like, don't bring us into your private, sanctified bedroom. And, I get that it's supposed to be a joke, but, like, there's so many other jokes you could have done. And especially in this current era, in this, like, political turmoil and all of the rollbacks of women's rights, it just feels so regressive to have that being like the, ha ha ha, isn't he such a lovable little fool? And it was especially ironic considering that, what was the Succession co-star, Jeremy Strong, was also up for his role as Roy Cohn in the Apprentice movie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Another film I have not seen, but from everything I've heard about Roy Cohn, like, what a nightmare fuel. But, like, once again, he's losing out, just like his Succession character, to, like, the younger brother who, just, like, bumbles and fumbles and charms everybody effortlessly into, like, granting him all the awards, all while, like, he doesn't take it seriously. He, like, mocks it and pretends like it doesn't mean anything to him. And I hate that kind of attitude. I really do. Because it's just another posture, right? He's just posturing.
A lot of them are. I mean, like, I wasn't like buzzing about any of the men that won this year or any of the women, to be honest with you, either. Because even Emilia Perez, like, oh my God, the scandal from that movie was hysterical, because I think everyone thought it was going to sweep the awards.
It was due to.
It was supposed to, I think. But then when that whole Carla thing happened where like they found out that
super racist,
like the comments of like the Afro-Korean festival and like for Daniel Kaluuya of all people, okay? Like seriously. Yeah, like all of that shit that came out, I think just like lost them a lot of goodwill. And like they were like, okay, we have to give them one award, so I guess we'll throw Zoe Saldana an award. But it was so messed up because like Mexican people were talking about how much they hated that show.
Mexican people were so pissed.
But did you see the interview like after that, like where I think somebody
Yes.
asked her like, "Oh, what do you feel about like all the Mexican people who've been rejecting this film?" And she was like, "Well, fuck you." Essentially, essentially the gist of that was like, "Well, fuck you. I got my Oscar. I don't care."
She was like, it wasn't about Mexico. What she said was like, it wasn't about Mexico. It could have been women from the Ukraine or Russia or anywhere. It was about
Or
this
Gaza, and I was like,
right?
"Okay, yeah,
Oh
like
my
maybe don't
god.
bring that shit in."
To show that her agent had her on a muzzle the whole award season because she only came out with that shit once she had that award in hand. But clearly she's been sitting on it for a while, right?
But that's the thing that people need to understand as well is like these people, they just care about these awards and they care about making money. They don't really care about, they care about the opportunity, they care about making money, they care about winning these awards. They don't actually care about social issues. And I think that was why it was so, even now, it's such a classic that Ricky Gervais was like, thank your God, thank your agent, and then shut the fuck up and sit down. Okay. Take your little award and go home.
That is a classic. And also recently I was watching somebody's like reaction to watching America Team Police, the puppet movie by the creators of South Park. And at the end of it, it's like all of these Hollywood actors are like on the side of North Korean dictator Kim Jong Il. And it's like this joke about how like Hollywood could not be more conservative and like reactionary and, really anti American in many ways. And that's something that I think the American public has a really, really hard time wrapping their head around. It's like these people are not your friends. They are to put out like meaningful, profound, philosophical discussions on life and the meaning of like nation states and what it means to be human. Like they want the money, they want the fame, they want the accolades, and then get the fuck out of their faces.
Yeah. And I think if you're going to Hollywood for moral advice, it's like, I don't know. It's like going to Satan and asking him, what does it mean to be a good person? You know what I mean? It's like you're wrong people for moral judgment and advice. These are like the blind leading the blind. They don't know what the fuck they're talking
Yes,
about. Once you have that
exactly.
much fucking money thrown into your life, like it's very hard to remain an upright moral person, to be honest with you.
Most of them come from some sort of like well educated background. Most of them never even go beyond high school as far as education is concerned. And I'm not saying that you can be in it. I'm not saying you have to go to beyond high school, beyond secondary education in order to be intelligent. However, I do think it's telling that most of the actors and actresses in Hollywood, none of them have any sort of degree beyond the high school diploma.
I will say there's some importance in getting a university degree beyond just the degree itself. It socializes you. It socializes you and exposes you to people of different backgrounds and different classes in a way that you might not be able to process in high school, right? When I was in high school, I don't think I processed class difference as much as I did once I reached college because I was older and I was better equipped to be able to actually discuss that. And so I think for a lot of them, it's like this is all they've ever wanted to do. They've lived in a very sheltered bubble in Los Angeles. Like this is why the British actors in general come across as more grounded. I think a lot of them go through stage first and they work in theater, and theater in the UK has become so severely defunded. The arts in the UK in general has been so stripped down. And a lot of the actors, at least from the 80s and the 90s, like I've heard like James McAvoy and Christopher Eccleston and Michael Sheen, all these people talk about this, but they were like, there was a huge movement back in the 80s and the 90s to get working class people in the arts, which isn't a thing anymore, which is why a lot of the actors from England now are extremely posh men. But once upon a time, like you would get a diversity of people of social classes in the arts in England, and like that reflected in the stories that they told and the kinds of grounded people that they show. Like even Killian Murphy, for that matter, came from a very ordinary sort of background, and he's still with the woman that he was with in university, or I think it was university, yeah. So you know what I mean? Like a lot of them tend to be more grounded in general compared to the Hollywood stars who come from LA who are just like, this is my whole life. This has been my whole life. I've never had any other exposure to other people, to the other parts of the world, to other social experiences, other classes. And it reflects the kinds of films they make and the kinds of shit that they do.
I like that you're bringing this up about England because I've heard like Michael Sheen especially has spoken out and Patrick Stewart, like they come from these like underserved, disadvantaged backgrounds, but like theater and the stage was made available to them because of those funding efforts in that period of time. Just compare like a Patrick Stewart or a Michael Sheen or a Christopher Eccleston or a Killian Murphy to, who do we have now? Benedict Cumberbatch, Joe Alwyn, Tom Hiddleston. Like they're such anemic men compared to like these other really what feel like really fully fleshed out human beings in addition to being men. And that's obviously been reflected in the movies that are coming out of there now. And another thing, another really classic example I've heard from a lot of like Black American actors is like all of how many Black British actors come over and like steal all of the good Black American actor roles. But again, like if they're coming from this background of stage and theater and they've come from a training program that has never been available, like I know that was a program that actually, who was the Black Panther dude?
Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, I was just about to bring him up because with a lot of the black actors, the ones who had opportunities have had opportunities provided to them by other black actors.
Yeah, Denzel Washington sent him.
Yeah, and helped him, and then I think he continued to do good work as well. But like, imagine you have to rely on the kindness and the good graces of another star to help you get ahead, as opposed to what England was at the time. Like when Daniel Kaluuya and Dave Patel and all these guys came, Nicholas Hoult, they all came up through Skins. And Skins was really like the show that launched like a lot of the big stars from England now.
1,000 ships. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thousands of ships. Yeah. Kaya Scott Lario. Like Skins was the sex education of its time.
Yes.
And so a lot of the stars from that show are the ones that are like big stars now. And they came from relatively like modest backgrounds in general. I think it does help that the older you are, the more grounded you tend to be. But like, I think it was Taylor Swift who said, like, when you're a celebrity, you're frozen in time from the moment you got famous. And so that's why so many of them still feel like children, because they were famous super young. And that level of money, wealth, and fame, it distorts your perception of the world. And it does make you out of touch, whether you mean to or not. It takes conscious effort to actually stay grounded and to surround yourself with people who will keep you grounded. And that's the thing. A lot of these men are not grounded in reality. That's why they write the bullshit that they do, right? But yeah, I mean, do we have any other scrotes we want to roast this time around?
I think that covers most of it as far as like the Hollywood edition. I think the most recent gossip I heard was that Channing Tatum, now that he's post breakup with Zoe Kravitz, apparently his new girlfriend, Channing is 44 and his new girlfriend is 25. So he's continuing the proud tradition of every other single male white actor following in Leonardo DiCaprio's footsteps, which is, right, make sure they're 20s or younger and never let them get beyond 25 or 26 before you recycle the new crop. And I think that just tells you everything you need to know about Hollywood in a nutshell. Just keep that in mind, ladies.
Yeah, it's so funny how all of them try to act like they're so progressive. And like people were talking about this like comment of like when Zoe Kravitz was directing a movie and he was like putting out all these captions. First of all, I never trust these men who put out these ginormous ass captions on their Instagrams about, oh, she's so hardworking and I'm so lucky to have her and she's the most divine thing that has ever happened to me. And it's like, why don't you show her and stop telling us, And the next thing you know, he walks out with someone who's like 25. And I was like, you know what, Zoe, you didn't dodge anything.
I think the whole Leonardo DiCaprio being like this ardent environmentalist is such a scam, because who takes more private jets than Leonardo DiCaprio? Between the private jets and the private yachts, his like emissions are triple that of like the continent of fucking India, for real.
No, but that's the funny part, right? It's like these men are sitting and giving you lectures about how to be better people, and they're terrible people. It's like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio is doing so much for the environment. Yeah, by taking his private jets and destroying it. Sure, we might not have a planet. I guess that's helping.
I know.
I guess our mutually insured destruction is probably a good thing to him. I don't know if, like, we consider it recycling when you recycle one younger woman for another, but I guess he is recycling.
Burn! That was a good one, Diana. That was really good. But I think that's something that we have to be really mindful, especially as we mature and grow older and get more grounded. It's like accepting and understanding that you have to really do a lot of due diligence when it comes to whatever media you are consuming. Because from the pen to the producer, there are so many different wells in which it can be poisoned. And it's all too easy and seductive to just swallow it hook, line, and sinker instead of doing your due diligence.
Exactly. And also stop romanticizing these Hollywood men. Stop putting them in a pedestal. They don't deserve it. A lot of them are scrotes. Like, I think it's just people overlook it because they're good looking, right? Like, if you just knew how cheap a lot of these actors are considering how much they make, like, go to Raya and go ask any woman that you know who's on Raya and ask them how terrible the celebrities are on there. They're horrible, okay? They're the cheapest guys you'll ever meet. They're bill splitters, okay? Can you imagine making like $1 million an episode and then splitting the bills with a woman who makes who's like an ordinary, normal woman? Yeah, there's some men who are like that. Okay, there's some celebrities who are like that. Maybe someday I'll get into which celebrities I know who are like that.
Ooh. In the meantime, don't get it twisted. And with that, Diana, I think we've covered all we needed for this edition of Roast-a-Scrote Hollywood. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to discuss these losers. They don't deserve our time.
That's what I'm saying. Moving on. Next. Thank you. Next. And to all you scrotes out of Hollywood, die mad.
Die mad, scrotes.
See you next week.
See you next week.